Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back to video 4B in the series where we're going to cover converting our existing QML to be compatible with PySide6. And alongside that, we're also going to create a screen changing class, and we're also going to create an audio playing class for our custom button that we're going to make. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and open up your project file, and we're going to quickly navigate to Qt internals, and we're going to go into constants.qml. And the reason for this is, for whatever reason, PySide6 and Qt Creator, if you ever go to generate your CMake list, they don't have access to Qt Quick Studio.application, and I was unsuccessful in trying to actually get them to use it. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. I've never actually had a need for it, so I'm not actually losing anything removing it, at least for now. So we're going to remove that import, and we're also going to remove this this property that was set here with this font. So that will make PySide6 useful. And now that we have that done, we're actually going to restructure this to be compatible for an actual hierarchy of an application. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and we're just going to call this the main project folder, or main project folder. Okay, and now we're going to rename our QML project folder, and we're actually going to rename this to QML. So I'm going to rename these two things over here to QML. And this folder itself. And we're going to go ahead and throw that into the main project folder. So now we have our QML code that is within here. And we're going to create a libs folder. This is going to be for your Python code. So we're going to go ahead and put in a audio player. And a screens. We'll call it screen changer. Okay, so we have our audio player and we have a screen changer, and then right in here we're going to go ahead and just create a main. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up in VS Code. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into main. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the imports. So we're going to import a bunch of stuff from PySide6. The first thing is we're going to import from Qt Core. And we are going to import the Q URL. We're going to do another PySide import, and that's going to be from Qt GUI. Okay, we're just going to copy this, make this a little easier. There we go. We're going to also import QtQML, and from there we're going to want the QQML application engine. We're also going to want Qt Quick Controls 2. And that should be good. So let's go ahead and start setting this up. So we're going to want to create the app. Just like so. And we're going to also go into Qt Quick style, and we're going to set the style of it. And then we're going to set that to the same thing as our whatchamacallit. We're going to set it as the same thing as the QML project, which was just set to basic. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and create the engine for it. This is going to load the QML, or the QML engine loader, I guess. Okay, so now down here we're actually going to add the QML path to here. So we're actually going to need to, at the top of here, we're going to import OS. And we're going to set the QML path. This is setting the relative path. And we're going to look in this folder for QML. Okay, so now we're going to use engine and we're going to load the QML. And we're going to use QURL for this. We're going to go ahead and pass in the QML path. Then we're going to specify the folder it needs to go into, which is screens. And from screens, we're going to go ahead and load the main window.qml. I believe that's what it was called. So QML screens main window.qml. Perfect. Okay, and now that we have that, we're just going to go ahead and do the sys.exit. Oh, we need to import sys. And we're going to do that app.exec. And that's the non_1. Okay, now that we have this done, we're actually going to have to slightly modify our QML a little bit. So I'm going to navigate into screens, and we're going to go into main window, and we're going to have to change these a little bit. So QtQuick 6.7 is fine, but for whatever reason, PySide6 can't make use of the QML directory, or at least I can't figure out how to. So we're actually going to create a comment here, and we're going to call this the QtDesign Studio. And so this is going to be the QtDesign Studio imports. And then I actually like to come in here with a /*/. This is code block commenting, so if you have more, you can keep adding stuff here, and then when you want to use it, you actually just have to back this out, and when you're done using it, you just put this back. Okay, so we actually have to import Qt internals differently, so we're going to use relative path with string, and we're going to be inside screen, so we're actually going to have to import back out a directory, and then we're going to go into Qt and then into internals. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of the existing QMLs, which is just the screen01. So this one has 2 that it needs. So the QtQuick, this is pre-built into it. This is fine, but this needs to change. So again, we're going to call this the QtDesign Studio. And we're going to code block this. And this will be the Python. And we're going to do the Qt internals. And we're also going to want, oops, I actually have this wrong right now. We're going to move this around a bit. This was supposed to be in here. There we go. Okay, so now we have the QtDesign Studio imports, which is Qt internals and custom components. And we're importing Qt internals through relative path. And then we're going to do the same thing with custom components, which is going to be the same thing back out of directory because we're in screens. And then we're going to go into custom components. Okay, so now that we have that set, we should be able to go into our main.py and just go ahead and run this. And as you can see, it all pops up in our window, and we have our clickable button. So now we have converted everything over successfully to work in Python. So let's go ahead and get started on creating the audio player and the screens. Okay, so I'm in my screen changer class, and we're actually going to need to import something real quick. So we're going to import from PySide6, Qt Core, and we're going to import QObject and slot. Slot so that you use slots so QML can pass into Python. So for instance, if you can pass in or not pass in. So if you needed to either call or you wanted to pass, like if you wanted to call a function and pass string in, you would use a slot with string in it. It would kind of end up looking like this. And you would actually use an at decorator. So this would kind of become this, and you would put this under a function, whatever your function was, and then whatever string you passed in. And then at this point, you could then print the string, and then if you set the root context of this in main if this was in a class, then you could actually end up calling this function and passing string in and using this function from Python and QML. So we're going to go ahead and create a class screens, and I like to put 2 underscores for my classes that are used within other libraries, because sometimes I would have extra classes within this library and I may not want to use it. It may just be designated to that script only. So for me, the double underscores indicates that it's usable in other scripts, or that's the one it's intended for. That's just something I do. I don't know if other people do that, but that's just something I kind of like. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pass QObject into the class. We're going to go ahead and initialize it. And we're going to pass self, and we're actually going to pass the root object, and the root object will be used later. So then after that, we're going to create a superinit. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and create a variable that's going to use that root object, and we're just going to name it root object as well. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a screen objects dictionary, and this is going to hold the keyword of the screen, and then it's also going to hold the object of where that screen's located. So I'm going to go ahead and call this screen objects. And within screen objects, we're going to create a screen01. And that's going to be equal to self.rootObject.findChild. And we're going to pass in the QObject into this. And then the child we would like to find is going to be screen01. Okay, so now we're going to actually create, outside of the initialization, we're going to create a function for hiding all screens. And this is going to start with an underscore. For me, that indicates that it belongs to this class only, and it's not used outside anywhere else. And we're going to call this hide all screens. And we're going to iterate through that class, and we're going to iterate through the values. So for screen and self.screenObjects.values. So now that we're iterating through, we're going to do screen.setProperty, and we're going to set that the property of the visibility, so that's visible, and we're going to set that to false. Okay, so now we have a function that will go through the screen objects class and hide every screen that exists.